side in terms of going out and bringing new companies and new technology into the business that way. The research side in terms of sort of core R&D. And then also we've got the partnering group, the DevConnect program, which includes our software development partners that whose products we might resell in some cases, or at least have run through our testing program and are able to sort of certify them as a Avaya DevConnect tested solution. So really all of a number of different ways to create intellectual property, which actually might be an interesting topic for you guys. People sort of wonder from an innovation perspective where Avaya fits relative to other companies in the marketplace. And we're actually an intellectual property development powerhouse. We've got about 6,000 patents and patents pending globally. Last year we filed 500 new patent applications. We were granted about 250 new patents last year. That puts us globally in the top 130 enterprise companies globally in terms of patent generation. We are if you sort of think about where does that compare to other people in our industry, take a look at somebody like on the contact center side, somebody like a Genesys generated about a dozen patents last year. If you take a look at some of the other tech companies like a Google, for example, they went from 400 patents to I think it's somewhere in the 1,000 range last year, but still relatively in the same order of magnitude that we're at. And I think a lot of people would be surprised at the level of innovation coming out of a company like Avaya. Hi, Brett Shockley.
From ADC. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. And I think one of the things that's interesting is that we're spending a lot of time both on that sort of core creation of new intellectual property, but we're also spending a lot of time on the process of innovation and how do you go from the work that you're doing in research to where those products are scaling on a global basis. And we've got a very deliberate innovation process that we're using to do that. So research is typically on the leading edge of experimenting with new ways to leverage technology. That sort of tends to feed into more of an open innovation approach than typically we've used historically or has been used in our company or in our industry. If you take a look at a few years ago, for example, when I first got to Avaya, when we released a new product like Avaya Aura, typically there was only a handful of people that were authorized to talk about the product to anybody, as little as 30 days before the product was released. Whereas we're doing much more today where we'll take these new ideas out of the labs, we'll build them into business relevant demos and put them up on stage. You'll see one tomorrow. And get feedback from customers about whether or not what we're doing makes sense. Should we make changes? Does it solve a problem? And then we're looking for sort of those beachhead customers that want to do co-innovation with us. And the idea might be to identify 6 to 12 customers that you want to work deeply with in sort of that first initial release of that technology. And you're looking for customers that are willing, that see the benefit of it and are willing to put it into production. And so we've done things where customers of ours might get a year or 2 year advantage over the rest of their competitors in terms of having access to new technology. So we're doing a lot of that kind of work. And then when we do go to scale it in the business units, version 1.0 that comes out as a generally available product is much richer than it would normally be. It's got the features have been better thought through, and there's better customer experiences behind it. So a good example of that kind of work that we've done in the last couple of years, we've done a lot of work with video into the contact center, and video kiosks, video ATMs, that's been a good example of that kind of a process of sort of proving out how you might go about doing this, looking for ways to then package it enough and integrating it with the rest of our technology so that it can sort of bring calls into a contact center, video calls into a contact center, and then migrating to where we're delivering it into a broader set of production customers, for example. So that's one of the areas that we've been doing a lot of innovation in. Another area that I think is interesting is a product that we announced earlier this year called the collaboration environment. And the collaboration environment is really an attempt to create a very, very large ecosystem of developers that can take advantage of the technology that we have in our products. So if you take a look at our industry as a whole, one of the big challenges we've always had is that to do really interesting things, you had to become an expert on all kinds of unusual and esoteric technologies that you weren't taught in college. And as a result, it's a very small number of developers historically that are creating the most advanced applications. So with technology like CTI, for example, you can do almost anything, but there's this many people on the planet that are really good at it, right? And so what we've done with the Avaya Aura product, and then now with the collaboration environment on it, and some things we've done with cloud-based access to it, is we've set up the ability now for people to develop in our development environment in a much easier fashion without having to have such specialized expertise. So a couple parts to it. So Aura was sort of the start of this, where we built a session management infrastructure based on industry standards, IMS or IP Multimedia Subsystem. And that standard is one that was really propagated by the mobile industry, because one of the key things that they wanted is they wanted to be able to safely bring third-party applications in that wouldn't put the network at risk. Because previously carriers were very reluctant to bring in any third-party applications because it might bring down the network. Pretty big deal if you're a carrier. So we chose that architecture and that standard to sort of design Aura around. And then the thing that we ran into was, as we worked on attracting developers, is that it was required them to have such expertise at such a low level that we couldn't get enough developers fast enough to do everything we wanted to see. So what we've done with the collaboration environment is we basically have built a middleware solution that's close enough to the basic functionality and platform capabilities of Aura so that you can do very, very interesting things. But it encapsulates all of the things that would normally be sort of the messy, communication-specific technologies that you wouldn't have been taught in school. And so now you can basically go and do the same kinds of Java programming that you were probably taught in school, web APIs, et cetera, to get in there and be able to build applications. So we announced this earlier this year. We just came out with the version 2 of it. We've got some of our own applications that we built that snap into the platform, and we've been recruiting developers to build snap-ins as well to go in there. And what we're finding is a strong interest in both ISVs as well as in the corporate development community, because it's something where larger companies tend to have lots of software developers. They like to create more of their own applications, and they'd like to be able to integrate the technology tightly into the rest of what they're doing in their business. And so what you'll see is more and more of the core functionality that we're building into our products is going to be made available as snap-ins into this collaboration environment, so that software developers can decide how to string these communication-related activities together. So, for example, we recently acquired a workflow company, business process automation software. And that gives us the ability to build that in and let people do business process automation within our solution, but it also gives us an ability to integrate it to other business process automation applications that they might be using for running their insurance claims processing or some other business process. We're building some next generation contact center technology that makes it much easier to do multi-channel integration on a massive scale. That technology is going to be made available through this platform. As we put each of these pieces in this way, it does a couple things for us. One is it allows us to get the technology out there faster, so it's a speed of market thing. The other thing is we couldn't possibly create all the applications that these ISVs might contemplate, and if we make the pieces available in a developer-friendly environment, connected with things like workflow and other connective applications that can be used to make it easy to connect it together, we think that we've got an opportunity to get a dramatic increase in the number of developers that are creating applications in the communications industry. You think about what's happened with the web and everybody, all those other technologies, mobile. It's easy for a couple kids in college to start up a business and go create applications in those environments. In our world, that's never been possible. I mean, I started a company back in the late 80s, and you literally had to go hire a sales force to convince a sales force like Avaya's that you were worthy of being introduced to the customers. You had to go buy $500,000 worth of specialized equipment. You had to teach yourself specialized programming languages and tools. Just the barriers to entry were very, very high as compared to web or mobile programming today. So what we've done with the collaboration environment really creates an opportunity to get rid of all those barriers and make it much, much easier for two kids in college to start a company. The other thing we've done that's key to that is the go-to-market piece. So we announced this product, the latest release, was something we call the Collaboratory, which is basically a web-based environment where people can go and write applications without having to own or buy the equipment. And natural next step, as you can imagine, is to start to make those applications available over time on a cloud basis, so that you've got a marketplace where people can purchase them. And it's interesting because you sort of wonder, would a big bank ever take an application from the cloud and go put it into production? And I think the reality is that if it's coming from a test environment that we've set up so that we've got a process where things have been tested and validated, if they can bring it into their lab and test it and validate it, and this is where sort of this architecture I talked about earlier with Avaya Aura being based on this IMS architecture that the mobile carriers are using helps, because now you can, they're going to feel more comfortable bringing something in from a cloud environment, testing it, validating it, and then pushing it into a test environment and then growing it from there, because it's sort of a safe and sane thing to do now, whereas the old architectures were too brittle. They'd never let you do that kind of thing. Let me pause for a minute. I've kind of been rambling for a while, but I wanted to give you a sense of some of the things that we were doing to try to accelerate the pace of innovation in the industry as well as in our company. Did that raise any questions? Or
that convention that you mentioned with your customers, are just with large corporations, or you also work with small businesses?
So, I think it's a mix. What we're doing with sort of the innovation process that I talked about generally, I'm looking for people that have interesting and relevant business problems to solve, that there might be a significant market behind it, whether it's big business or small business, I don't really care. It could be that you're doing this with a company with 1,000 people, or it could be you're doing it with one with 100,000 people, and they both have benefits, right? The 100,000 people, they can assign more resources to go work on it with you, but the path to getting to where they actually do something in production is longer, right? The 1,000-person company, they might be more willing to experiment and play, but they have very limited resources, so you have to do a lot more of it for them. So I think there's benefits to working with both types of companies.
And what is the benefits in this open innovation in compare with a traditional approach to innovation for companies like Avaya?
Well, I think one of the things that companies tend to have this concern that they've got to keep everything secret till the last minute. And that gives them market advantage. And I think in some cases that's probably valid, especially you look at some of the consumer products that are out there. You look at something where you're basically, selling a device or a new application that's relatively standalone on that device. The problem in our industry, if you do that, is that capital budgeting cycles tend to happen on an annual basis, and if you really want to change the game, especially in larger companies, it could take a couple of years to really get new technology absorbed into those businesses. And so one of the ways that you avoid that problem is that you basically help your customer base to sort of understand your roadmap, where you're going, how things are going to come together. You give them guidance on what they might want to be thinking about from a budgeting perspective next year or the year after. And so you're likely to get faster absorption of new technology if you do that. Secondly, you're more likely to get it right. we all have just tons of stories of how version 1 of products are interesting, but nobody really wants to buy them or use them. I prefer to wait for version 2. Well, if you do a more open and complete innovation process working with your customers and your partners, you're more likely to have that first full version 1.0 be more on target with the features and capabilities that people want. It will have been already tested in production environments, so it's really more like a version 2 as compared to a lot of other companies. I think the other thing is that from our perspective, what we're delivering to the market is much more of a complete solution stack with multiple layers in it. And so we're innovating at multiple levels in that stack at any given time, but the idea for the customers, we're sort of showing them how the whole thing's going to come together. So there's probably less fear that, oh gee, if we tell people about this one piece in the stack ahead of time, that our competitor's going to swoop in and steal our market advantage, because it's really more about how does that complete integrated solution work better together than it is about one component within the stack. I mean, you're still going to have the issue of there's some things you don't want to talk about until it's time. But it used to be that the pendulum was way over here, and I would say it's now not all the way over there, but it's past the center in the other direction. And I think that works. I get one of the most frequent things that we run into with customers when we go and we talk to them about all the new innovative things we're doing is you get this feedback that they had absolutely no idea, and that you just kind of go, I got to solve that problem, right? And obviously you guys are all a good path to help solve a problem like that, right? But there's a tendency that people always measure a company and define a company based on history, and we have a great history, and it's great that we have Avaya phones with our logos on millions of people's desks all over the world. But it's kind of interesting. People probably, in many cases, when you start this kind of a conversation with them, they sort of think about us as if we're a hardware company. And when I got here 5 years ago, we were 2/3 hardware, and today we're 2/3 software and services. So the company's made this complete change. We're a completely different business. The speed of innovation, the number of new products, about 100, I think it was 101 new products in 2013. We still have to make sure we're getting the word out and that people understand the level and speed of innovation and the value it provides to them.
How can a partner innovate using Avaya? For example, these things that you were talking about,
yep.
Like an application, all these things.
Mm-hmm.
But maybe most of the channels doesn't have the time or doesn't have the money or the interest for doing it because they are in a day-to-day business.
So there's really a couple ways to do that. I mean, a partner has to decide how they compete and what they're how they're going to play, right? Some partners compete because they're the most efficient deliverer of the services. Some people are the best warehousers and distributors. Other people are developing more complete solutions and doing professional services with the customer, and that's their point of differentiation. I guess from our perspective, we have to sort of recognize that the ecosystem of partners is not homogeneous. We have to sort of say, all right, let's make sure that we understand what each of those guys needs in different parts of our business, cater to it if we want to maximize success. So if you take a look at, I started a partner back in the late 80s. I started with 3 people and $3,000 of capital, 3 credit cards, 3 mortgages, and a hat, and I grew it up eventually to about $80 million, and took it public, took it private, did a transaction with one of the industry players, number of OEM deals, and I happened to grow my business with a lot of focus on innovation and complete solutions, and so I was working with the manufacturer. In those days it was AT&T, to give us access to their new stuff way before it was generally available, so that we could learn from it, figure out how to make it relevant, make ourselves relevant to a broader group of customers, and in fact participate in the early alphas and betas and the kind of thing that frankly I'm talking about that Avaya is doing today. And so for me that was a key point of differentiation for my company. Other partners aren't going to be interested in doing that. They're not into they don't want the complexity that's associated with that. They just want to be able to move quickly. And that's where having sort of easier and standards-based ways to bring in other companies' products and even for custom applications to get developed makes a difference. So for the partner that's just looking to bring the pieces together to deliver that solution, we've got a very robust developer program, the DevConnect program, where people can test and certify applications. We have a subset of that program called the Select Product Program, where we will, in some cases, actually put our part number and on those some of those applications where we see them as being important to round out the solution. So we're trying to make as many options as possible available to those partners that want to be able to bring together a solution without actually being a software developer or doing things themselves. And then by having sort of easier ways to have custom applications built and integrated using things like the collaboration environment, that makes it easier for that partner, if there is something a customer needs, to go contract with somebody else to bring that piece in. And feel confident that the fact that somebody created that other application is not going to screw up their core platform functionality or capability or reliability.
If you started a partner today, if you are outside Avaya right now, and you started a new partner, what are for you the key technologies that you would invest?
Well, there's a lot of great new things that are coming, and this is an interesting world because there's a need for absolutely cutting-edge new technology, and there's a need for sort of solid platform technologies underneath to sort of glue it all together. Tomorrow in my keynote, one of the things I'll be talking about is WebRTC as a technology that's beginning to have an impact on our industry, and that will get much greater over the next couple of years. You guys familiar with WebRTC, but it's a real-time communication capability that Google's been promoting into the market. You're starting to see it along with HTML5 in browsers. And essentially what it allows you to do is to do real-time media like voice and video, screen sharing and the application sharing, things like that, from within a browser without any separate plugin. And the quality is very, very high. And so WebRTC is, think about it as a new and different alternative to what a lot of people sort of have done with Flash in the browser in past years. And what we're, the use cases that we're seeing with WebRTC is we see sort of three key areas where we expect a strong foothold to happen. One is sort of outside the enterprise into the enterprise. So whether that's a customer who's would traditionally have been calling a call center, and now they're in their web browser, and they might escalate from self-service on the web to chat with an agent, to voice with an agent, and maybe even to video with an agent, all from within the browser session. So we're delivering those kind of use cases today using Flash technology. That'll migrate to WebRTC relatively quickly. And in fact, that use case is quite powerful. One of the other things that I'm sure you'll hear talked about at the conference is that we're doing that within our own contact center. So if you were to go to our website for support, you can do self-service. You can use an automated agent to chat with our knowledge base. If that doesn't get you what you need, you want to get to a human being, we can connect you then into a human being. And on the back end at that point is all of our traditional contact center technology for routing, queuing, screen popping, reporting. And later this year we'll have video also available as an option. So basically you can go from the browser all the way through. You'll see those kinds of use cases really driven towards WebRTC. But in that use case, for example, you still need a back end. You still need a platform that sort of does all the things that we traditionally do, to route it, to queue it, to screen pop it, to report on it. Because customer service operations, to be run effectively, run on metrics and reports and management systems, and it's an important part of it. So that's one example. The second example is that we'll see people looking to extend the enterprise. So everything that you can do within the office for collaboration, video, etc. People want to have exactly the same set of capabilities on whatever device happens to be in front of them. They don't want to download new applications and be trying to keep things current all the time. And WebRTC is a good approach to be able to start to extend the enterprise. We're still at a point where it doesn't actually, within the standard, have everything you need to give you the same functionality you have with an application. So it's likely that you'll see plugins or thin apps that are running in a lot of the devices to complement WebRTC for some time to be able to sort of give the richness of the experience that people want. And then the third use case is one that I would call team social collaboration. And you'll hear people talk about WebRTC as being something that's just going to completely take over everything in communications overnight. And these are tend to be more of the use cases that you can actually implement reasonably quickly and ignore kind of the old world. And that's that you can embed it into applications. And so, like if this group of folks works together regularly, it's relatively straightforward to have everybody's be able to communicate with everybody in that group, write applications to do voice or video or document sharing or whatever, and work together and sort of ignore the rest of the communications infrastructure. And I think you'll see that that use case also being driven. You'll see people embedding it in applications, business applications, for example. That if it's very common in work groups that people all live within a given business application, and now you can communication enable it easily and make it all work together. That use case, though, isn't sort of like connected to the rest of the world and the rest of the enterprise. And so, what I think will happen is that the requirements to connect it back into the rest of the directory infrastructure and the rest of the capabilities that are sort of driven in a robust UC environment will also people will look to connect the two together to sort of give both. But if you're in a small business, you wouldn't necessarily need that. I mean, if you get a company of 20 people, how many of those capabilities do you need? So from my perspective, when I think about back to your question about if I was going to go start a company tomorrow, I would probably look at bringing those two things together. I'd basically say, okay, how do I make sure I got sort of my solid core that allows me to deliver undisputed capability, availability, all the things that everybody's going to require. But then how do I create that innovation layer using new technologies like a WebRTC to be absolutely on the cutting edge of what could be done with using that technology? I'd probably look at how do I go and integrate that in with different vertical business applications. And if I was starting a company from scratch, I'd be saying, okay, who are the people I should be partnering with that have hot and growing business applications that I could sort of be the guys that bridge those things together. That'd probably be one area that would be interesting.
If this company has success, you buy it.
Exactly.
But when you look at your R&D budget, it's more focused on just improve your portfolio that you already have, or you have some part of this budget to this kind of new breakdown technologies, or should just buy acquisitions, different companies?
No, that's absolutely key to the process that I was trying to communicate earlier, in that we have our business units that have large development staffs, a lot of products. They're doing new product development. They're coming out with new releases of products, as you would expect. You're always challenged in that environment by this quarter's P&L. You're challenged by your success already in the market. People want new features on the next release. They want you to come out with new versions of the product, and so it's hard in that environment to take a totally step out to the side and do something that's completely disruptive and different. And that's one of the reasons that we've got this process with research and emerging products and technology, where the research team basically submits projects to their management that they want to go pursue, and those projects are evaluated, and people are small teams end up working on these projects then. In some cases, they might be several years ahead of when anything they do is going to have any
value.
Any commercial value.
Yes.
It's not going to show up in a product, right? But and part of my job is to try to accelerate that, right? And so, as they come up with things that look interesting, how do we take those and start to go test the market, figure out whether they have value, and then look for some of those key customer use cases where we can actually go and deliver them to customers. And the goal is to make that group sort of act like a small startup company, that's sort of got that ability to, get out ahead, break some rules, do some things that are different and innovative. And it sort of propels the company forward in a number of ways. One is that we create new capabilities within that group itself. The other thing is that because they're partnering with the business units and saying, what are you looking for, what kind of problems are you trying to solve, it's more likely they're going to come up with some things that are going to be more immediately relevant to the business unit and can be absorbed more quickly into the business unit. Also, the things that they're learning will inform the work that the business unit is doing every day in their development. They're more likely to blend new innovative concepts into new releases of products and things because of what they've learned from what they get from the research team.
Is there any possibility that you partner with, for example, some city to make like an investigation and development center to create new solutions for specific markets that can grow and be cross countries?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. We've done a little of that with economic incentives in some countries. It hasn't been a big focus up till this point, but I would say particularly in some of the rapid growth countries of Latin America, Asia Pacific, we're really starting to explore where those opportunities might lie. In some cases, it's a requirement for access to the market. In other cases, it's an opportunity to get additional funding to put into our innovation program.
So it is a yes.
Yeah, it's a yes. I just am sort of talking you through it as I think through it. Yeah.
During the sessions, networking has been mentioned as part of the bucket of solutions that you would expect to be gaining space out there in the market. Also, you mentioned the fact that the deployment of UC solutions would be faster if the customer buys also networking solutions. And also you mentioned that for your partners, selling the whole bucket of solutions, networking, security, UC, video, would mean higher rebates for the partner. So, having said that, what is Avaya doing right now in terms of developing or working with new trends such as SDN?
Yeah. So, one of the things that we're doing a lot of work in virtual networking, which basically makes SDN more real. If you take a look at what we're doing in Sochi, for example, we're going to have 150,000 plus people show up on the first day of the Olympics with whatever they happen to be carrying. Mm-hmm. And, we have to identify them, we have to secure them, we have to apply the appropriate services. And, we certainly don't want the press being on the same network as timing and scoring, for example, right? And probably some of the stuff the athletes are going to do, we probably don't want them on the same network as anybody. But and so there's a good example of a network where there's all kinds of different applications that will be running on it. They're going to be changing them up until the last minute because we're using the virtual service networking and the Fabric Connect technology that we've got. Essentially, those applications can be configured at the edge. You don't have to go in and touch every piece of hardware, which it's likely, in a system like that, somebody would screw up. That's the thing you got to be very careful of. We did the Vancouver Olympics, and that was something that, was a big challenge because people would be asking for changes right up to the last minute. And when you made a change to a VLAN, for example, you'd have to go in and touch every single device that was involved. And if you made a mistake on any of those configurations, the whole thing wouldn't work, right? So, there's an example of where you're able to do things really differently. Another example that we've seen with this capability and sort of putting the stack together with that virtual networking is video. So multicast is kind of one of those things that most CIOs just kind of cringe when they have to deal with video over video multicast. And it's very complex, and there's oftentimes, if there's problems, it goes down for not milliseconds, but seconds or longer. We have a good use case with the city of Santa Clara, California, where they're using multicast to coordinate all the traffic cameras, and they both use it for safety as well as to manage what's happening from a flow perspective during rush hour. And with the previous network technology that they had, it went down so much that they basically couldn't do any of their automation around their traffic flow automation. And we put in the new fabric technology, and now we enabled video multicast without constantly touching every piece of hardware. It hasn't been down in the first 3 months since we put it in, and their traffic's flowing better. The stoplights are doing what they're supposed to do, and when there's an accident, somebody can actually see it. So and where that's led us actually is we now have a number of the video surveillance companies around the world that are basically saying, "Wow, that's a new technology that makes a big difference for my business. It's differentiating and it solves a big problem," and so we're starting to get a lot of traction in that market. And that wouldn't happen without doing something that was truly differentiating. Another good example, when you look at where that fits in terms of this idea of the solution stack I talked about, is that we can now, with the combination of that technology, the virtualization work we've done against all of our products, we can now go into an environment, and oftentimes it's the solution's sort of split between a couple of data centers, and we could have tens of thousands of phone calls flowing through a system. We could, while it's live, move the VM from one data center to a different data center, upgrade this one, and then move it back, all without ever taking the system out of production. And that's as a result of integrating the whole stack together. And that's something that none of our competitors can do. And when we're out talking to service providers about things like cloud-based UC as a service or contact center as a service, they get a big smile on their face, because typically they're in an environment where they're up 7/24, they might be global in nature, and there is no good time for downtime. So that's some of the kinds of things we're doing with it.
Last question. I know you have to go, but...
All right.
You are moving more than to be a software and services company in the future to be a middleware company.
Mm-hmm.
Is that right?
An observation?
An observation, yes.
Yeah. A way to think about us, though, is that we're, as a company, going to have an eye on that complete solution stack from the user experience all the way down to the network layer. However, we're going to be open at every one of those layers, and we're going to invite ecosystem partners to work with us at those various layers. And when a customer says, "I think I've got a better answer over here," we're going to work with whatever that other product is, while at the same time we keep working on each one of our layers to make sure that we end up with the best breed product at that layer. And the way we talk about it is that we're going to win because we deserve to win at each layer, not because we're locking people in from a proprietary perspective. So creating tools like collaboration environment and middleware makes it easier for both our own people as well as for other partners and customers to innovate up and down the stack. And so that's really our thought process there. It's not to sort of give up on delivering people complete solutions, but to, at the same time, allow everybody to play and participate.
Perfect.
And I think if you take a look at sort of market segmentation also, on the higher end of the market, people want to be able to do everything. I mean, some of our larger customers have more developers than we do, right? Mm-hmm. But in the mid-market, you have people that say, "I just want it to work, and I want it to go in quickly, no problems, no questions asked, and have a very, very rich solution." And given where we are in the marketplace, the market share that we have, we think it's important for us to be able to deliver both kinds of solutions.
Thank you.
All right, great.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.